Rob Davis is a partner at Via Partners, and he is going around the industry talking to you about the buy-sell process and how to align the way we do business in ways that are similar to the way the media we compete with do business. He's going to end this and then have a dialogue about those data standards. But before we get to Rob, we are fortunate to have a gentleman by the name of David Shiffman, who is Senior Vice President and Director of Research at MediaVest on our technical committee. David.
Sorry.
Okay. And we thought it would be good to pause and take a look at the world of general advertising and the issues they face today and what we have to do to work in alignment with the general issues that challenge advertising as a whole. So with that, I'd like to introduce David Shiffman.
Good afternoon, everyone. I guess there were a couple different ways we could talk about data standards, and one could be a really long and boring discussion about statistics and how important it is to get all the data together, and I thought that would be painful for me, and that would be painful for you. So let's take a little more common sense approach to it. So I'm the research director at MediaVest, and as Joe said, I'm also on the TAV technical committee, which I joined probably 18 months to 2 years ago. And one of the key reasons I did that was because I think the outdoor industry is poised for so much growth, and if we can get to the right data standards, it's really going to help fuel the industry and drive the industry. And that was really sort of part of the reason why I got involved in it. I think we all know this. Media's become a lot more complicated. So we as agency people face an awful lot more questions. Where are people? What are they doing? And how on earth are we going to measure all this to make actual decisions? So, just talking in here, when we think about, traditional outdoor, and we think about transit, we think about digital and all the challenges we face in the outdoor community. Now think about all the things that are going on every second, every minute of the day that we are all trying to decide upon and think through. And that marketers need to get a handle on to understand how are they actually going to make their marketing work, and how are all the pieces going to actually come together. The nice thing about this is it means a ton of opportunity. Right? There's opportunities for everybody to connect and reach consumers in new and different ways. And thinking about, all the different people that we can connect with and get marketing messages in front of in all the different platforms, the different times of day and the different contexts, and be able to get to the right decisions by understanding all the opportunities that we have in place today. But the huge challenge is, how on earth do we get there? So when we sit down with marketers and think about, of all those options we have, how are they actually going to contribute to reach and frequency and audiences, but also how are they going to actually contribute to business results? So the first and the absolute critical part of it is counting the people. Who, how many, where, why, when. And one of the questions that was asked about, well, what about the impact? We absolutely need to get to impact, so I don't want to suggest that we don't need to get to impact, because we will, and we will continue to do that, and we've got lots of data and tools and technology to help us get there. But if we can't get to standardization in terms of counting the audience and counting reach and impressions and frequency against the people we want, we can never get to the second stage, which is optimizing it. So how do we figure out how much do we need? And in what combination? We're not just talking about within a particular channel, but thinking about across all the channels, across all those opportunities that we're looking at from a marketing perspective. And once we can do that, then we can start to measure it, and measure it from an effectiveness perspective, so that we know that 10 GRPs here drives this kind of results from a consumer perspective and from a business perspective. But the key is, unless we're all talking about the same things and thinking about the right measures on the front end in terms of counting, we can never get to consistency in terms of how we think about measuring the results, improving the ROI, and getting to, here's how this works, here's how these things work together, and here's why we are going to continue to invest, and invest more in the areas that actually drive the best ROI and the best business results. again, from a common sense perspective, why are data standards important? All right? And it really is about common language. You want to be able to come in as sellers and talk to people like me who work in agencies across the board and help build systems and bring data together to make decisions. You want to be able to talk to our outdoor specialists, and you also want to be able to talk to our planners, and you need to be able to come with the same language that people understand. I've worked in this business for a long time. The old outdoor measures, I still don't understand them. And I think I'm a relatively intelligent person. I still don't understand them. But I can tell you that internally and with clients, they understand reach, they understand frequency, they understand impressions, and they understand ratings, because that's the language that we talk. Okay? That's how we measure. And it really is absolutely important that we have the same conversations, so that we can talk about things in the same way. You know, comparability, so that we can look across and understand what those trade-offs are. Consistency is absolutely part of the equation, and what I call sort of integrity. And I specifically didn't say accountability, because I think it's bigger than accountability. When we have data standards and when we're all talking the same language, there is integrity in the data, and everybody can understand it. So we can all look each other in the eyes and say, I know what 100 ratings means, you know what 100 ratings means, and we can all work together in the same way to drive what we're all trying to do, which is drive our marketers' business and ultimately drive your business and drive the agency business as well. So obviously that's why we're collaborating and getting it all right. All formats, all platforms, so consistency and standards within the outdoor industry, critical. And really, again, you know, underscoring the point, data, media, standards. Target demographics, so who are we talking to and how many of those people are there. Viewability-based impressions, which is actually pretty unique for this industry, as opposed to a lot of other industries that can't get to, do people actually see the ad, or do we think they maybe have passed it? Well, that's a huge opportunity to take advantage of. And then the common media measurements that we talk about. So 3 key things why I sort of urge you and plead with you to you know, fully adopt out-of-home ratings. It makes everything more data-driven, which actually makes things easier, not harder. Adopting it, understanding it is a challenge, but when we're all talking the same language and looking at the same types of data, it is way easier for everyone to work and make decisions. And it's not just about out-of-home specialists, it's about the entire industry and all the people you're going to talk to and touch in your conversations. Buying and reporting becomes comparable to other media, again, and that makes it more meaningful. So it makes it easier, it makes it more meaningful, and it means that you fit in with the broader measurement systems and tools that we have available, including ROI modeling and all those other things that are increasingly important to marketers. So those are sort of the 3 key things. It's not just me who believes it. These are some of my friends in the industry, but also leaders and thought leaders in the research community in the media world. Artie Balgren, who is the SVP of Research at ESPN, has long talked about, you know, and advocated for standardized media metrics in the television space, in the digital space, in the outdoor space, in all spaces. Everyone's trying to get there, and we all need to get there together. Helen Katz, who's actually a colleague of mine in Chicago at Starcom Media Best Group, again, the same idea and the same feeling. By going to standardized measurement, it will better align out-of-home with the way that we evaluate all other media. Okay? And again, makes it more meaningful, makes it easier, and makes it easier to prove the value that you bring, not just from an audience delivery perspective, but being able to follow that all the way through to the impact that you have, which we all know is tremendous. So that was, you know, really the little bit of long way around to saying all of the investment that's been made, all the work that the TAB has done, that you have all supported as an industry, let's make sure that as we go forward, we fully embrace it. Right? Common audience-based standards. They are absolutely critical to growing your business. And I kind of always look at it, you know, from the negative side is, Well, I can't guarantee you that embracing it has a one-to-one relationship with growth. I can tell you that not embracing it definitely has a relationship with much slower growth. And ultimately, you know, refrain from using legacy terms and numbers. We've got the data. We're in a different world. Everyone has had to evolve. The print media has had to evolve. Digital continues to evolve and try to figure it out really slowly, but they're getting there. So let's continue to embrace it and continue to move in the right direction, because we all win when we do.
Good afternoon. I'm Rob Davis, and it is a pleasure to have a chance to talk with you for a little while this afternoon. You know, it was almost a year ago. I'm going to talk with you about transforming the buy-sell process, which to me has been one of the most exciting things we've had an opportunity to get involved in a long time. But I want to put it in some context. And that is, a year ago, or a little less than a year ago, this topic of, okay, we've got ratings, how do we accelerate their use, started to become a hot topic, and even hotter with the OAAAs leading the effort on brand repositioning, where there were two attributes of the brand, mainly accountability and audience-driven, that were a key part of this brand image that we're trying to create and deliver, and yet at the same time, they're table stakes. They're not differentiating, and I think we're hearing that from some of the comments. We just have to get them in place. So if you heard Bob Pittman this morning, he talked about dissenters and loving to talk to dissenters about, you know, why we can't do something. And my work started out talking with many of these panelists and talking with many other people in the industry and finding out what's getting in the way. And it's really terrific here today, and the transit and digital work that's happening would have happened anyway. But I think there was even more impetus, Joe, and you may agree, to get these out there, because some of the folks on this panel, I remember distinctly telling me that one of the barriers was wanting to have a greater percentage of the inventory that was in out-of-home buy be rated inventory, and that would help accelerate the use of ratings. There were many other things that have happened in the last 3 or 4 months. I think it's worth noting Sean McCarthy from TAB, and if you don't know Sean, but in a short period of time, one of the things that would get in the way is having ratings, reach, and frequency on the desktop of everybody who is a TAB member. That will be the case through enhancements to the ADS system that will become available in the short term. They're in final use testing right now, as far as I know. I watched Joe last week using them, using ADS for those purposes, so I know it's there. There's education and training that's being put together on all the rating systems by Larry Hennessy. Everybody at TAB has had an extra oar in the water over the last year. I mean, I don't know what they had before that, but as long as I've known them, there's a lot of paddling going on, a lot of good things happening. So with just those things as a starting point, and I would also mention that the TAB board has been, I've never been in board meetings as I've been in the last couple of TAB board meetings where so many motions were passed, so many motions were brought up, and so many were passed unanimously. And it's just become a trend, and they are really setting the pace under Jack's leadership to help all of this move forward as quickly as it can, in fact, faster than I imagined. So I will mention that one of the things that they passed in last October's board meeting is that a resolution that DECs will no longer be supported or updated. And so if anybody's using DECs, and of course there will be a transition period of time, they're using an unaudited, outdated form of measurement. That's a bold statement. I mean, the industry is moving forward. Joe and I began to talk about his vision for moving forward ratings use in the industry. And beyond all of these good things, beyond digital, transit, and everything else that's happening, the vision was something like this, and you've heard it already today. Out-of-home needs to trade on the same basis as other media. We need something that's more consistent and predictable, while it takes into account the special uniquenesses of out-of-home and also leaves room around the edges for buyers and sellers to trade, to exchange other important information on a particular campaign. We need to streamline a process that's inefficient. Both buyers and sellers that I spoke with told me that the amount of effort that went into both creating proposals as well as compiling received proposals and selecting among them was an extremely onerous task. and that needs to get fixed. We have better places to spend our time if we want to grow to 8% or 10 or whatever the number is. We want to ensure the correct use of ratings. We wanted to take into account both the importance of ratings in making a buy decision as well as a unique feature of out-of-home, which is location. We want to protect the interests of TAB members. If we're going to get ratings data out into a broader circulation, we need to make sure that they're being used in accordance with the wishes of TAB's members. We want to simplify training challenges. Imagine if we had standards and consistency. We could train people from day one. And in 3 or 4 years, I don't think we'd have a lot of AEs or specialists who knew that there was another way to do business in the industry. And finally, a lot of this efficiency and transforming this buy-sell process implies software. And we needed to find a way to attract more software providers, and the availability of standards and opportunity for consistency brings in more software investment and more applications. So those are all the things that were laid out as the vision that Joe brought to me. What we did over the past 3 months was we benchmarked the TV and radio buy-sell processes because we were looking for consistency. We wanted to make sure that our assumptions about what was happening there were accurate. We engaged, it was well over 55 people from 90 companies in the both plant owners as well as agencies and specialists. And we iterated with them. If I look a little weary under the eyes at times, we went back and went back and went back until we finally got things that everybody agreed were generally acceptable to them. And our team was in contact throughout this process with all the software developers who were playing in this space because we wanted to learn from their experiences, and we wanted to engage them in being potential partners as this moved forward. So you can't read this, but I will tell you on the way out at the end of the session, there's a report that we submitted to the board yesterday that there are copies of, and the findings and recommendations from this are in here in more detail. But this was sort of just to show you that we went through the due diligence of looking at other media and understanding how they transact so that we could try and create similar process. And we worked on 3 things. One is a standard RFP. One is a standard set of data elements that would be used in a proposal process. And the third were data exchange standards and provisional license agreements so that we could get the data, the TAB ratings data and reach and frequency into the hands of software developers. So for the RFP, we said, you know, if you're going to buy, is there some standard set of information that it would be helpful to provide to a seller so that they could put forth their best effort proposal? And we looked at other media. We wanted to develop something that was, had the required information, but also allowed buyers to ask for unique elements related to a campaign, and would allow sellers to put in information like they do in other media that would help make the case for the purchase of their inventory. And we wanted to take into account in this standard a recognition that when buyers go ask for information, sometimes it's in reaction to a hard RFP or a hard request. Sometimes it's a little softer, it's an RFI or a spec. We wanted to make sure that we didn't say you have to provide all the information for every type of proposal, but we could differentiate. So what we didn't want to say was that the information had to go in a particular template. We were agnostic whether this information that is conveyed in an RFP goes in an email, a template, a software package, a voicemail, whatever it happened to be. So we were able, after these many iterations with buyers and sellers, to agree. This looks a lot like a template because it is, but this could be in any format. And what this represents is the information that the TAB board has now agreed makes sense and should be provided to a seller, a seller when they are being requested to bid on a campaign. And it's very simple. There's a bunch of client information. There's a campaign strategy and goals. There's some buying specs. This comes as close to standards as we want to talk about, but in terms of the media markets, the campaign start, end date, demographics, rating points, any ideas on the formats that might be used, coverage location requirements. And then the whole bottom section is easy to customize additional data that you may want to provide that would that help shape the real structure of the campaign that's being bought. So this becomes an industry best practice, and over time, the hope would be that buyers and sellers can exchange this kind of information as proposals are being sought. So that's sort of deliverable number one. Deliverable number two is the proposal itself and the data elements that would be exchanged. And here, I think we've all agreed that an industry standard set of data elements would facilitate the buy-sell process. I mean, if you knew when RFPs came in what data was going to be provided back, or what the universe set might look like that the buyer might be choosing from, it would be easier. Buyers can certainly specify which of those data elements they want and which they don't want for a particular campaign. Standard data elements that we developed, we felt that they should be workable for existing TAB inventory as well as the stuff that's coming online that you've heard about, the transit and digital. It should be easy to populate on the seller side and easy to compile, analyze, and select from on the buyer side. And it should clearly separate TAB-rated inventory from other inventory, which is quite important to media owners. So these two pages, which nobody can read, are actually the left side and the right side of a single spreadsheet that exists in this booklet that you can see. But it does define, it's in an Excel format, but again, this could happen in any format. But if you think about the beauty of this, is that as a seller, you could populate on this, on whatever format it is, you could populate the TAB unique ID number for the inventory piece and the price. And everything else could auto-populate from the TAB database with the exception of photo sheets. So this becomes a very simple way to bring the kind of consistency that we've been hearing about today to the business transaction process, or the data exchange process. So that's the second deliverable beyond the RFP is the proposal standard. Again, the TAB board unanimously voted yesterday that they support this. These are live documents. We're going to move into use testing. I'll talk about it in a minute. These will change and improve over time. TAB has governance over the future evolutions of these formats, and they are going to assemble some kind of a committee of members to help guide them through that process. The third thing that we wanted to get accomplished was getting data into the hands of software providers. TAB, working with its council and working with the councils of member companies of its executive committee, wanted to revise the TAB data access process, get the data in the hands of developers and encourage innovation. This isn't just about, automating this Excel spreadsheet. This is about getting applications developed around it that provide advanced analytics and other things that we don't have today. It involves tying in whatever transactional process there is here to back-end systems, both in buyer and seller companies, to create the same kinds of efficiencies that they have with other media that tie into MediaOcean and that type of system. And so also we wanted in the data access policy to ensure the proper use of ratings. So there were some rules set about in terms of data access policy. Vendors who are requesting data have to sign an agreement with TAB that governs access, et cetera, et cetera. And you certainly can request a copy of the provisional license agreement from Larry Hennessy at TAB. If you'd like to read it in great detail, I guarantee you it has as many whereases as you've ever seen in your life. But this is out there now, and I'm delighted to say that we had a webinar with the software providers who currently operate in the out-of-home space, both those who had access to TAB data and those who didn't. And I believe at least a couple of companies have already signed provisional license agreements, so software development is well underway in small windowless rooms in various cities. So that's happening. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to issue an RFI to other software companies that we think we'd like to see consider investing in the out-of-home space, and see if we can encourage others to come in. And TAB will be working with these developers every step of the way to make sure that what they're developing moves smoothly from a provisional license to a full license agreement. And so we can get the stuff out there that's going to help bring this efficiency. So recommendation summary, an RFP guideline, a standard proposal format, third-party provisional license agreement, all out and in place and ready to roll, be further tested, and be evolved in the case of the first two. Next steps, use case testing, and we have a number of buying services that have agreed to work with us on this, and hopefully the plants will be cooperative as well as we move into this testing. We've already talked to a number of them. We know they will be. They're excited about this. Agency advertiser communication, which is beginning at this conference, working with these third-party software providers to get them successfully building solutions that are going to take care of the issues that we've struggled with around efficiency and consistency, help member companies with transition as needed, and incorporate this into the training, because now we can take the RFP template, the proposal standards, and we can go out and not just train people about ratings and media conceptually, but train them how we transact in this industry. This has been, you know, for a strategy guy, Joe has managed to educate me along the way. But this is a real accomplishment. I hope you feel that way. And real credit to the TAB board and executive committee and staff of TAB for having pulled all these things off. So with that, Andrea, turn it over to you.
Thanks. Well, I think the entire panel would agree that over the years it has been challenging, based on the volume of disparate information that we work with, to come up with recommendations. That lack of data standards has certainly been a challenge. Ray, would you like to provide some feedback for us?
Sure. One thing that David had mentioned during his presentation that really struck me, is full of common sense and simple, but so hard to get to, was a common standard is critical to growing our business. That's so, so true. But to get to that point is enormous in this industry. And I totally agree with Rob. I mean, the TAB under the leadership of Jack and Joe should be absolutely applauded for tackling this issue. It's such, the enormity of it was incredible. And to the point where we are now, to say that we're at that critical stage where we have the ability to begin to look at standards and commonality is just fantastic. And from where I sit on this panel, and I'm sure all my colleagues would probably agree, when you look at how we do business and what our process is, it's a pretty simple equation. You know, you have consistent, efficient input will provide good, efficient, and effective output, which is what the solutions we build for our clients. But what's missing is all of the work that's done in the middle of that. You know, all of that work process that flows that we do on our end. And to have common standards will really make us more efficient in that middle process, to be able to make us better at what we do, give us more time to do what's more important for our clients, to think, to be strategic in that end. So there's more to this than just numbers and standards and all of that. It's how it's going to effectively change how we do business and make us more efficient. And I think everyone in this room should hold us accountable for that. To be able to, on our end, to do that the right way, because it's critical from us to survive in the agency world, to be more efficient, more effective at what we do. And I think data standards is ultimately a vital step to provide that roadmap for us to do that.
Yeah, and I would just add, I mean, we all manage our P&Ls, and while we don't necessarily have the luxury of hiring armies of people to crunch the numbers and work with all the data, we need to lean on systems, tools, and new processes to help us offset some of those challenges. So obviously adhering to some standardization of workflow and the communications and pieces of data that comes back and forth between agencies and the selling community really speeds up our process. I mean, we work under incredibly tight timelines. We're very leanly staffed. So we very much encourage the use of the data, new templates, making sure that we're providing that kind of information back and forth to our clients is really what we need your help in.
Yeah, I mean, as an industry, I think we're late to this, so it's comforting and heartwarming. It's nice to see that we're finally sort of catching up because, you know, amongst our brethren, again, we are late to the table. You know, I can't tell you 5 years ago we were working off Excel, so you know, it's time. You know, we've built the systems, we've built a lot of the standards already. I think agency by agency. But, you know, getting it to a point where there's standardization across all of the vendor community and really, which I think will help standardize a lot of the agency process as well, I think it's fantastic.
And all the details are so stable. It's so simple to do this for our medium, even more so than others.
Yeah. I think that we might be late to the table, but I think the timing is also right because of what the TAB is doing with measurement. So I think that also makes a lot of sense. And for those of you that aren't aware, a lot of what my buyers are doing is where if we send out an 80-partner RFP, we have to get all of that information back. We have to audit it to make sure that it was delivered upon, you know, based on our criteria, and then we have to input it so that we can look at everything as a whole and then whittle it down into a consideration set and then a final recommended set. So having a tool like this will enable us to reduce that time and move business forward, which is what we all want to do.
It'll also be a big time saver for the media operators as well. It'll be so much easier to respond to all of the RFPs that are coming out. I think it's just going to do everyone a world of good. Make us all much more efficient in the dirty work, if you will, so that we can all go out and sell more out-of-home campaigns to our clients.
If you all were looking for a throwdown up here today, it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Any questions or comments from the audience? Well, I think we're all completely thrilled to see such a wonderful, active, and engaged group join us this afternoon. And I thought this was a great example of all the hard work that's going on behind the scenes and all the wonderful tools that the TAB is bringing forward for us, and specialists and agencies and clients who are excited to provide more strategic recommendations. And I want to thank our panel for providing their expertise and input. Thank you very much.